Hey everybody, welcome back to the garage. So if this is your first time visiting my channel, please go ahead and click on subscribe and also click on the bell to receive all the updates and activities on my channel. So for today's project, we're going to be working on the 2012 Polaris Switchback Adventure 600, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to be removing the stock spring on the rear shock, and we're going to be putting the higher capacity spring. Some people call it the Fat Boy spring. But essentially, the reason why we're doing this is my family, we're going for a trip this upcoming weekend. My daughter's going to be riding 2-up on a sled, and with the stock spring with the added weight, that spring doesn't have enough capacity to compensate for it. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the spring on. We're going to remove the seat. We're going to remove the shock, the reservoir, and we're going to remove the spring from the stock. From the shock assembly, put it back on there, show you how to set the preload, and go from there. Alright, so the first thing you need to do to get access to the shock, you have to remove the seat. So the seat is held on to the back of the Adventure rack by 2 Torx bits, with 2 Torx headed screws, and they are T27s. And so what you want to do is essentially they are right here underneath the seat. It's kind of hard to get a good shot of them, but essentially there's 2 screws. You're going to take those out, and then the seat is going to slide off. Alright, so now with the seat removed, we have better access to the shock. Alright, so what we want to do is we want to take the shock off, and right now it's held on by a bolt right here. They're both 15 millimeter, right? And the rear is 15 millimeter as well. So what you want to do is you want to take all the tension off the shock, so it's not binding up in there. So what you want to do is you got to raise the rear of the sled off the ground. And you can't do it by the bumper, because remember, the bumper is part of the suspension. So if you have a Switchback Adventure with a rack on it, just go through the holes on it with a couple straps and lift it up. If you don't have the rack, you can also go down through the floorboards and lift it up that way. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to remove the bolt on the top of the shock. We'll get that first, and then we'll go off the bottom one right down there, and then we'll go ahead and take the reservoir off as well. Alright, so after about 5 minutes, the shock is out. It's very easy to get it out of there, just using basic hand tools. So shock's up on the bench. So the way to get the spring off is essentially you gotta take this shock retainer off the top of the shaft, but to do it, what we have to do is we have to take the tension off the existing spring. So we're going to back this collar all the way down, and then we'll be able to take the top retaining plate off. So what we're going to do is we're going to just stick it in the vise, and we're going to use a strap wrench to go ahead and back the nut off. We're going to spray this down with some penetrating oil to make it a little bit easier to turn, and just turn, and we'll get it off. Alright, so now that you have the tension, all the tension removed off the spring, essentially the way the spring is going to come off, there's the retaining collar, and if you look, there's a slot on it. So essentially what we need to do is we need to pull the spring back, and it's going to be relatively easy to do because there's a lot of slack on it right now. We'll remove this collar with a slot, and then this ring will pass over the eyelet on the shock. Alright, so I got that off. That comes off. Now the spring's off. So all we have to do now is kind of the reverse. We're going to get the big boy spring. We're going to put that on there and basically put it back together the same way we took it apart. Alright, so in case you're wondering what the difference is in the wire gauge, so here's the stock spring right here. We'll roughly call it 3/8. And this one is about, call it 7/16 roughly. So it's quite a bit
quite a bit difference on the the diameter. Not only is the diameter different, but the windings are a little bit closer together as well. So again, this spring is really meant for two people. So if you're not riding two people, utilize the stock spring, because if you ride this, if you install this and you're riding with a single person, this thing is gonna ride like a dump truck. It's gonna be very stiff. All right, so with that being said, why don't we go ahead and put it back in the sled, and we'll set the preset. All right, so here are the two, I guess what we'll call gauges that Polaris will give you. So essentially the one on the left is the gauge for the standard spring, and the one on the right is for the heavy spring. And the way that this thing works is, the way you got to use it is essentially what you're going to do, here's the retaining collar right here, there's the bottom side, and then there's a separation between the shock body and then the shock mount. So the way this thing works is, you're going to take the tool and you're going to put it up against the collar, and basically you're going to adjust the collar for the rider weight that's going to be on the sled, and go from there. And once you do that, you set it and really you forget it. So that's all you really need to do to replace the spring on the shock for your Rush or Switchback Adventure, or whatever you may be using with the Pro Ride suspension. I hope this helps out everybody. If there's any questions, comments, concerns, go ahead and leave them in the comments box, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. And as always, thanks for watching and have a great day. See ya. Bye.